Welcome to Mom Alternative, where we try to provide a rational perspective to motherhood, parenting, and relationship troubles. Today we'll cover how to react if your partner wants a prenup, if your spouse is totally against your parenting style, and if you're jealous of your fiancé's coworker, amongst other things. Our first thread is titled, Pregnant Partner Asked to Sign a Prenup. I'm 7 months pregnant. The baby's father has never proposed, so a couple of months ago I suggested getting engaged. He has agreed under the condition that I buy him an engagement watch, just so he can reciprocate with a similar value ring. Getting engaged is an important cultural value to me, so I paid for his watch. I've been able to distract myself from thinking about how worthless this makes me feel until he demanded that I sign a prenup before getting married. I feel like someone has robbed me of my dignity. I cannot share this with friends or family. I am so ashamed. I have rented out my property a couple of months ago and moved in with him, so I cannot go back home. I feel worthless. He disrespected me so badly and I cannot even tell anyone. I'm on an edge of a breakdown, feeling so low, but I need to stay strong. Now, prenups, I have a lot of complicated feelings about prenups. I don't have a prenup in my marriage. I think of prenups as the solution to divorce, really. And that kind of means, obviously, I understand why we need a solution to divorce in today's day and age, where quite a lot of people get divorced. But I kind of think it's one of those aspects of marriage that are probably coming at the problem from the wrong angle. That's just my perception of it as an outsider. I had a friend for a long period of time who was a lawyer, and she used to work in a divorce lawyer's office. And she was one of those people who said that the experiences that she made in that office were so intense and so horrifying and just so sad, I guess, heartbreaking, that she felt like you should never ever get married without a prenup, because the alternative of trying to have a clean divorce, or rather the alternative to trying to have a clean divorce via prenup, is a really, really messy, months-long battle that just leaves everyone exhausted and emotionally drained, and that just breeds a lot of resentment and anger and hatred towards the other partner, especially if kids are involved, which obviously makes it so much worse. And so obviously I can kind of understand the temptation to go, hey, okay, prenup just solves all of our problems. For me personally, prenups only really make sense if there is a unequal amount of wealth coming into the marriage. So if, for example, one partner has already, has a business, the business is super successful, or it's even a family business or something like that, and they want to make sure that this thing that they already have is protected before they get married, just to be safe and just to feel a little bit more secure heading into the marriage. Fundamentally, though, I feel that prenups are really about giving yourself an out, that it's this idea of, okay, you know what, maybe we're married, and for now, I'm pretty committed, but if things don't go so well, then not only am I out, but I have an easy way out. And I think that that's the part that makes prenups a little bit dangerous. I would be very curious to know what the numbers are in terms of people who have prenups pre-marriage, and whether prenups actually help them have a longer marriage, how that plays out statistically. But I don't know what those numbers look like, so I can't really comment. What I find very interesting about this particular case is that clearly the partner here is not that into marriage to begin with. This comment of, hey, he is happy to get engaged so long as she buys him an engagement watch that he can reciprocate then with a similar value ring. So he's kind of saying, hey, I'm only happy to spend money on you if you spend the equal amount of money on me too, which sounds to me like he doesn't give a crap about getting married. He's not really dedicated to it. The fact that she suggested it already suggests to me, to be honest, and maybe this is a little bit traditionalist of me, but it already suggests to me that he's not that into it. And so she already says that she felt a little bit worthless within this context of the ring and the watch. And then like the cherry on top is then he says, hey, okay, and I want a prenup. And so it sounds to me a little bit like he's kind of dragging his feet. He's really not that into it. He's already making her feel worthless, and they're not even married yet. She's 7 months pregnant, which is probably not the best solution in terms of getting oh, let's say not the best timing if you get pregnant before you get married, but getting married is still really, really important to you. And so in general, it does not seem to be the best possible setup for all of them. And so what that means is that neither of them are really on the same page when it comes to marriage, when it comes to prenups, when it comes to whether getting married is even important or not. The idea of him being someone that provides for her and that really appreciates her and respects her is also not really there. And especially when she reacts to it so intensely, it sounds a little bit to me that they're just completely on opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to the question of prenups. And she says, it feels like someone has robbed me of my dignity. So she's definitely taking it as though he's already making a statement that he doesn't really want to get married to her. And he's very much prepared to get out of the relationship. There is a hint here that I think is kind of hard to read, but if you read a little bit between the lines, and she says, getting engaged is an important cultural value to me, and then she feels like she cannot share this with her friends or family. So that means that most likely there is some cultural aspect here to marriage for her that gives it a different weight and a different meaning than he probably has. And it seems like he doesn't have any kind of appreciation or understanding for that. So basically, if I were OP, honestly, I would really question, where are we at with this relationship? What values do we actually share in common? How far are we from each other in terms of what we want out of life? Is he really dedicated and committed? What's the rest of his behavior around the relationship, around her pregnancy? How does she perceive him in terms of what he'll be like as a dad in future? And I think that these are all important things to answer and to question before you get married to him. Because, I mean, it's already going to be messy since you already have a kid on the way, and that sucks. But it will be additionally messy if you then get married and put your kid through that experience of living with both parents when they aren't on the same page and they don't have the same values. And if the husband in future makes the wife feel like this on a regular basis, and that's a real serious problem. So there is definitely also the fact that she doesn't even seem prepared or able to really go to him and talk to him about it and have a conversation along the lines of, okay, why is having a prenup important to you? Are there assets that he's trying to protect from before he comes into the marriage? Like, this is a conversation that you should be able to have on the same page as adults. And it's clear to me that this is not the case. And it's hard to know if this is because he's just really not into it and she is, or if this is because she's super emotional already about the entire conversation and she's maybe so into it that it's a bit of a turnoff for him. It's really hard to tell what the actual dynamics of the situation are. But if I were her, I would really question if this is the right relationship for me forever, for life, because I think that's the kind of mindset that you need to have before you get into a marriage and hopefully have a successful marriage. To read some of the comments here, this person says there seems to be more issues than just the prenup, but if you feel disrespected because of the prenup, I honestly wouldn't. If you live in the States, each individual state has policies for splitting assets. If a separation or divorce were to occur, a prenup allows you both to create your own policies for your marriage or separation, so you don't have to default to the states. If a prenup is what he suggests and you truly want to be with him, meet with an attorney and set forth your list of demands for your marriage and your list of demands if a separation were to ever occur for yourself and your child. Now, I personally feel that this piece of advice kind of comes very much from this culture that I think is very dominant right now, where everyone is pretty pro prenup across the board because everyone is scared of divorce. And I would still argue that I think the vast majority of people who think that way about prenups are people who either have been exposed to divorce at some point, who've experienced it themselves, or who have friends who've experienced it, like who have some kind of idea of how messy and painful a divorce is. And I believe having been divorced already is one of the top predictors of future divorces as well. So maybe I would consider, I would probably not take that piece of advice super seriously, because honestly, I think that from an individual perspective, there is a question of, okay, if one of your values is we're all in, we don't want an out, then this should be a value that you're able to share with your husband, right? Then you should both be on the same page when it comes to that, because then that's how you actually have a successful marriage. If one of you is already looking for an out and the other person is like, no, I'm all in, I'm 100% in, and I would never consider leaving this marriage, then you're already going to have problems. So if a prenup is what he suggests and you truly want to be with him, then I would question why is the prenup for you so painful? Why is the idea of a prenup so painful? Why did you take it as a personal affront? And is that something that you could possibly in future work through with him? If not, then obviously one of you might have to compromise here, but what are you compromising for, I guess, is the question. Is your relationship already so important and so deep and so essential for you? Are you really do you really believe that you are going to be in this relationship forever before you compromise on something like this that's so important to you? As you can see, this is really, really common here. Pretty much everyone's like, yeah, I don't really see the big deal with prenups. Next person says, I honestly don't see the big deal in a prenup. I almost think if I had anything in value before, I absolutely would have. There's nothing wrong in protecting yourself. It doesn't mean that they don't love you. Fact is, if you're getting married for the right reasons, signing one shouldn't matter. So many people get pregnant, suck people into marriage, and then expect alimony and child support afterwards. You do it for love, not for money. I would definitely have a lawyer look at it and make sure it's completely fair. Anything after the marriage will be split 50-50. I wouldn't take it personally. Lots of people have been betrayed and hurt, used, and you can never be 100% sure about people's intentions. Now, the watch thing I find off. There should be no conditions like that. To me, it sounds like he just wants something out of it. And so I, again, would get this if he had a conversation with her along the lines of, okay, he's coming from a previous failed relationship. The previous divorce that he went through was extremely painful, or he has experienced divorce in his amongst his, from his parents or something, and he understands exactly how awful it can be, and so that's why he wants to protect himself. And I'm pretty sure that if he had approached it in that way with her, she probably would be a lot more understanding. So, I'm just saying it's not necessarily a point against prenups. But if the mere suggestion of a prenup is so shocking to you in a marriage that you're like, what the hell, where is this even coming from? Then there's probably a lot about each other that you don't really know. And maybe that's the fundamental problem that you should be trying to fix. And now you see, this is someone I agree with 100%. She says, number one, he never proposed because he didn't want to. You became engaged because you asked for it. If he has a lot of money and you don't, it makes sense that he wants a prenup. That being said, he's treating the relationship as a business agreement, especially with that watch cost comment. I wouldn't marry him. So that's pretty much how I read this as well. Obviously, we only have her side here of the story, so we don't know exactly what happened and we don't have a lot of context, but definitely the watch thing is a huge red flag. That's not the sign of a man who really wants to marry someone. One person replies to that comment. She says, yeah, I agree with this. He doesn't want to get married. You do. Add that prenups aren't bad. You wear seatbelts in case something happens. Have insurance in case something happens. Prenups are in case something happens. Not a big deal. And I don't think OP should take it personally. And yeah, I find this an interesting comparison. This is not how I would treat my marriage either, because I think that there is a difference if you really mean, we're in this for life. And, in sickness and in health, I find it, the comparison of having a prenup being like a seatbelt is a little bit strange to me, but maybe I'm not such a big fan of seatbelts. All right, so in general, I think that prenups can really work for people under the right circumstances, and prenups make sense for certain people, again, under the right circumstances. What I would always question is if one partner really wants a prenup and the other one really doesn't, then what does that say about where they're at, their values in life, how they feel about marriage, how they treat marriage, and how they approach it? Because I think that that's fundamentally the part that you have to agree on. And obviously it could happen that you're both like, hey, you know what? This marriage is absolutely paramount importance to me. I am 100% in, but I still need a prenup. And that's completely fine. If you can have that conversation as adults and agree to it, then that's fine. But if you're in a relationship where your partner makes you feel, quote, worthless, then, or is robbing you of your dignity, then I would probably question if that's the right relationship you want to be in for the rest of your life. Our next one is titled Spouse Against Everything I Want. She says, with only 2 weeks left to go, I didn't realize our parenting style was so different. This is baby number 9. Number 4 for me and 6 for him. This is our first child together. I am very natural. I want a drug-free birth like my others. He doesn't get it or want to listen to my reasoning. When I let it be known that I want to be up during labor in any position I feel comfortable in, he thinks I should be in bed like a normal delivery, stuck in one position in bed for hours. Everything from breastfeeding only, cloth diapers, using a baby sling has been a big issue. I never used pacifiers and bottles. His kids had them until over age 4. I'm really worried how this is going to go. And so to this one, I also question, like, she can't be that young if she has already had 4 kids or is having her 4th kid now. And presumably he's also not that young if he's already had 5 kids and is now having his 6th child. So how do you end up in a marriage with someone who has, again, completely different values to you? I find it so hard to imagine. So for me, for example, the idea of wanting a natural drug-free birth, an unmedicated natural birth, that means that you have a value in terms of appreciating the natural process, that you have a different type of perspective when it comes to what is my body capable of, and what is the best possible start to life that I could offer my child. I think that that's part of what goes into like why people want a natural birth more than anything else. The fact that he doesn't get it or want to listen to her reasoning kind of blows my mind, because it's one of those things where it's like, she's the one giving birth. Like you can't really convince her to take painkillers. That's not how that's meant to work, but okay. And this point where she tries to explain the idea of being able to move during labor and to select, to choose the position that feels natural to you, that feels right to you, which is, by the way, generally speaking, also pretty normal, pretty natural, and is much less likely to result in tears if you move with your body and you try to listen to what your body desires during birth. And then everything else kind of follows down the same path in terms of breastfeeding, cloth diapers, using a baby sling. Like, I can't even imagine having a disagreement about trying to use a baby sling. Things like pacifiers, bottles. I would say that the life that she envisions for her kids and the life that he envisions for his kids are about this far away from each other. And I question a little bit how much you could possibly have in common as grown adults with lots of kids if you've never had a decision, if you've never had a discussion in terms of what types of parenting style you want to have with your children. Now, I understand that raising newborns, raising babies is different from raising teenagers, adults, and so on, but there's still enough crossover there that I would question exactly how you're managing to do that without having ever realized that you're completely on different pages when it comes to, and she says she has only 2 weeks left to go before giving birth, I assume. So how did it possibly take so long for you to realize that you're not on the same page? I don't have a lot of opinions. Like I honestly don't have advice here. I do think that things like breastfeeding, cloth diapers, how you give birth are fundamentally the female role. And so obviously she can labor and give birth in whatever method, whatever way she wants. If she wants to breastfeed, then she can go ahead and breastfeed and so on. But when she says that everything that she wants for her baby has been a big issue, and if you disagree on things like using pacifiers, etc., then you're going to have a ton of conflict in your marriage. And I have no idea how you're going to work past it, because to be honest, this is like so many layers of disagreements that I don't know how you could possibly get on the same page. And if you're both relatively I want to say old, but I don't mean like old. I rather mean, if you're pretty set in your ways, you both have a lot of experience with kids. So this is not, the chance of you being able to convince him to change his mind or to change his outlook is pretty low. And the chance of him being able to convince you to change your mind is pretty low. So I honestly have no idea where you could possibly go from here. It seems to me like a pretty untenable situation and a pretty untenable marriage. And so I guess my only piece of advice for anyone who might be listening to this is please, please, please try to find out these things before you decide to have kids with people, before you decide to get married. I get the point that, a lot of the time you grow throughout a marriage, or I say a lot of the time, pretty much all the time, you grow throughout a marriage as well, you change together. And ideally, the fact that you are in a relationship and you're with each other and you're supporting each other will also change you in similar directions, that you'll also transform into something else. And that's pretty awesome and romantic and sweet and great and so on. However, that will always fail if you're really like, what you want out of life is very different. If the types of things that you just appreciate and enjoy and want to do are very, very different, then it's really, really hard for you to try and salvage a marriage or a long-term relationship from that. So I find it quite sad, and I really just don't understand how this could possibly happen. The very first reply is, sounds like there'll have to be a lot of compromise. Yeah, you know, and I'm not sure you could compromise quite this much. Could you? Like, I would never compromise on most of the things that she wants. I would maybe compromise on things like cloth diapers. I wouldn't compromise on a pacifier. I wouldn't compromise on breastfeeding. So yeah, that sounds like it's gonna be tough. Next, person suggests a documentary titled The Business of Being Born. And then she says, my husband let me take the reins with my baby stuff, and it's easier on him with my decisions anyway, because she's exclusively breastfeeding. He doesn't have to feed her. Cloth diapers, he rarely changes them, but he will do the disposals. Where and how I wanted to birth, no argument. Medical stuff, he doesn't even try to argue with me because he knows he'll lose. I'm a nurse, so I'm more knowledgeable in that area. And then OP replies here, which is a pretty horrendous reply. She says, he works 68 hours from Monday to Saturday, so he won't be in charge of diaper changes or feedings. He's just that controlling that he has to decide everything, even things that should be up to me medically. Really, it doesn't matter what the subject is, he has to disagree or have something to say about it. For example, if I were to buy a personal hygiene water bottle for after birth and Depends underwear for the week after birth, he thought that was stupid. Makes me feel like I don't know what is best for me. I'm going to be 41 next week. I think I should be old enough to know what I need. And that really just sounds to me like this whole marriage is just like, I don't know how you can move on from here. So if I felt like I was being infantilized by my husband as a 40-year-old woman, it would completely blow my mind. The idea of buying yourself a water bottle and then having to justify that to your husband also blows my mind. That she herself describes him here as just so controlling that he has to decide everything. I don't know how you end up in this marriage. That just sounds pretty awful. One person says, these all sound like choices that are for you to decide. How you birth is up to you. How you feed is up to you. How you care for your baby is up to you when it comes to baby wearing, pacifiers, diapers, etc. And how you choose to care for yourself postpartum is also up to you. You know yourself, your body, your needs, and you know your baby. Sounds like he'll have some tough adjustments, but that's on him. And I always think that when people say things like this, they are just completely ignorant of the actual direct situation that she's in. Because yes, to some extent, those things are up to her. But actually, no, the baby is not hers exclusively. And so when it comes to things like baby wearing pacifiers, diapers, generally speaking, the father should have a vote. It's not that he's just there. It's not that because the woman is so much more involved, especially if she's breastfeeding and so on in those early weeks, months, years, that means that the father has absolutely no role to play. And the fact that there is a disagreement here always highlights to me, especially depending on how fundamental the disagreement is, and this seems to be a pretty fundamental disagreement, the fact that there's such a disagreement here suggests to me that there's such an opposite. They're both on completely opposite ends when it comes to the values that they believe in and the types of life that they want their kid to have. And I don't know how you can come back from that, because even if you solve the argument here, even if you say, okay, you know what, I'm the person that's going to be looking after the baby and I'm the one giving birth and so on, so I don't really care what you say, I'm just going to do my thing. And he goes along with it. Say you now have a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 10-year-old. Are you still going to be on the same page or are you still not going to be on the same page when it comes to raising the kid then? And then you're kind of screwed at that point. So, yeah, seems pretty rough and unfortunate to me. Next one says, unfortunately, I don't think this is a difference in parenting issue. I worry that this is a marriage issue. This seems like a control problem rather than what he actually feels is best for you or his child. I would get to a marriage counselor ASAP if I were you. I'm so sorry to read this post and all that you are experiencing. And then this person says, I agree with the previous poster. Sounds like some underlying issues, and not to be mean, but lack of communication on both parts. Now, I don't know that I'd say, hey, there's a lack of communication here. It sounds to me like you're just on different ends of the spectrum when it comes to what you think early motherhood and childhood should look like. And that's a pretty big shame. I do agree fundamentally that this sounds like a marriage problem, and I have no idea how to fix it from here. But I would hope that if you invest a lot of time in trying to get yourselves on the same page and trying to understand where the other person is coming from, why they want to do things in a particular way, maybe his reasons for it are fundamentally along the lines of, yeah, this is just foreign to him. And, he's experienced 5 other kids who didn't have any of this. So he doesn't quite understand why you want to do it differently. He's happy with the way that his kids were raised. Maybe you can really sit down and try and have an in-depth, detailed conversation about why you are so far apart when it comes to these things, and why it's such a big deal to him when it comes to things like how you choose to give birth and labor, which sounds a bit strange to me. Honestly, I think the vast majority of husbands would not have a very strong opinion on that. So I find it strange that he does. Our next one is titled Jealous of Co-worker. My fiancé started working at a bakery recently. He started telling me how this one co-worker is annoying him because she seems controlling. They open the store together each morning. He knows I'm still working on jealousy, and I've asked him not to get female phone numbers. He told me not to worry about it. I checked his phone the other day and found that he did add her. For now, it's just him telling her when he'll be late for work. He deleted the text. I'm not feeling great about this, and I know I have trust issues. Do I have anything to worry about? I already made the mistake of confronting him about it. He said she has a boyfriend and that he feels annoyed with me. I don't know what OP has in her history that gave her the trust issues that she has, but if you are already saying, hey, he knows that I'm still working on jealousy, and I know I have trust issues, and I'm going behind his back to check his phone. So in terms of behavior, I'm not displaying the best possible, most trusting behavior that I could possibly display, then I would probably say these are all giant signals that you're already aware of, that maybe you're acting in a way that's not good for you or for your relationship. And if I were him, I'd be pretty pissed off as well. Because to be honest, this idea of, okay, don't get female phone numbers is, number one, a rule that you would only make if you did not trust your partner. And number two, the fact, like, it's a little bit unreasonable if he's talking to her about work. So if for whatever reason you need to text someone to say, hey, I'm going to be late at this time, and we're both responsible for opening the store together, so of course she's going to get really annoyed if he's late, then it seems to me completely natural. Like, this is not a conversation that I would find a red flag at all. And I say that, she says she already made the mistake of confronting him about it. So what happened was she checked his phone. She read that all he said was, hey, I'm going to be late at this point, and maybe a second point or whatever, however many texts there were saying that he's going to be late for work. And then she went up to her boyfriend and was like, hey, dude, are you cheating on me? Essentially, I checked your phone and I saw that you texted your coworker, and that's a real major problem for me. And to me, that's like taking a bottle of gasoline, pouring it all over your relationship, and then setting fire to the whole thing. Like, I don't know how you expect to be able to continue with each other from that point onwards. But if there is a total lack of trust like this, now either the lack of trust is based on something, or it's completely unfounded. If it's based on something, then I would probably say it's good to end the relationship. If it's totally unfounded, then he's probably going to end the relationship, or he will cheat on you at some point in the future, just because you already suspect him of doing it all the time anyway. So in terms of still working on jealousy and trust issues, these are pretty major problems that you need to start working through and start trying to fix before you spiral any more out of control than this already is, which I kind of think is pretty terrible. So if I were OP, I would not be in a relationship where I don't trust my partner, and especially if it's a fiancé, I would definitely not get married to someone whose phone I need to check in order to ensure that he's not cheating on me. And I would probably consider how my behavior is really impacting him and what the signals are that I'm sending to him, because she says he deleted the text, which says to me that even though it was a completely innocent exchange and there was nothing going on, he still knew that she would check his phone, and then he deleted it to try and avoid the conversation, which implies that he's kind of already going a bit crazy with dealing with her. And that's not very fun either. Now you can see some of the comments. One person says, has something happened in your relationship with him that makes you not trust him to this extent? Even if there are concerns with him specifically, this is no way to live for either of you. Honestly, I think he has more to worry about than you. Not allowing him to have a female co-worker's contact in his phone is very controlling and needs to be addressed if the relationship is going to continue. And that I would agree with. She does sound a bit controlling. OP replies, yeah, I agree that I'm coming off as controlling and I'm trying not to be. I'm pregnant and already having to deal with his baby mama. My guy tends to get addicted to things easily. And now that he's not drinking, he's feeling bored. And instead of making connection with me, he plays video games. It makes me jealous that his coworker will get to have conversations with him. And I have to almost beg him to talk to me. And then another person replies, it sounds like there are way bigger problems here than just the jealousy. It would benefit you to go to couples counseling. Now, honestly, sometimes I feel like people throw around the term couples counseling or marriage counseling or therapy very, very easily. And maybe I'm not knocking any of these things, but I find that if the only way you can ever solve problems in your marriage is by bringing in a third person because you can't sit down and communicate with each other, then that already says that there's a problem as far as I can tell. So yes, I would agree with that person here in that this relationship seems like a hot mess. So she's super hyper controlling. She's very jealous of simple things, everyday things that any man might go through. It's already a blended family. So he already has a child. He already has an ex that she has to interact with. This idea that he gets addicted to things easily and that he had to stop drinking. So he maybe was an alcoholic. And now he's most likely addicted to video games. And she doesn't feel like she gets any attention from him, which then worsens the jealousy, which worsens the control. So basically, it's just a complete mess. And I don't know what she's getting out of this relationship. I mean, she's pregnant already. You know what's really sad about all of these cases is that the woman is always already pregnant. And so even though you have such a messy relationship and you're both on totally opposite ends of the spectrum, you're like on completely opposite ends of the planet. And now you're trying to build some kind of foundation where you raise kids together. And obviously that's not working. So you're going to bring a child into this. And that really sucks. Another comment here. This person says, I would be more concerned with a man that needed a coworker's number to notify them that they were late so often. What is that about? And then she says, red flag, red flag. I think if you're opening a store, I mean, okay, I don't know how often he's late. And she doesn't say how many texts that she saw like this. So it could be that it's just one or two, in which case it's a pretty normal regularity to be late. And then OP says, yeah, I pay for most things. And when I complain about a bill being so high, he stays quiet and doesn't even offer to help. Yet he advances his baby mama money whenever she needs it. So I'm feeling a bit of resentment. And it sounds to me like OP honestly just hates the relationship. She hates everything about the relationship. She doesn't like the guy. She thinks that he is cheating on her or very likely to cheat on her if she doesn't watch his every move. She already hates the whole interaction that she needs to have and his interaction as he needs to have it with his ex. This idea that it's a bad sign that he gives his ex money when she needs it, which I would assume in the majority of cases she's asking for money from him because she needs it for the child. I mean, there's always different ways that you could look at these scenarios, but I don't think that OP is really the right partner, is with the right partner here. Next person says, sounds like he needs to communicate with her for work, so you need to back off. And then OP says, I understand, just wanted to vent mostly. And then you'll see some of the hilarious things that happen on these forums sometimes. The next person replies to that and says, hey, she doesn't need to back off. She's pregnant and has explained that she's pregnant, dealing with his baby mama, and he spends his free time in his games. Her feelings are valid. I don't know what it is that happens that makes women so defensive, and number two, that makes them use pregnancy as an excuse to just be a complete terrible person. I don't know what it is. I don't think that it's reasonable to say, okay, no, look, you know what, I'm pregnant, therefore I can do whatever I want. I can behave in whatever way I want. I can be as irrational and as emotional as I need to be. My feelings are valid. That's not acceptable. Like, that's not a reason to behave in a particular way. It might be an an excuse. It might be an explanation. You might be saying, hey, okay, you know what? I'm super hormonal. I know that I get upset really easily. I start crying, makes me a little bit paranoid and so on. But the moment that you have enough self-awareness to go, hey, you know what? Like, I realize I'm being very controlling and I realize that I'm pregnant, so maybe I'm a bit more emotional than I usually am, then that's already a moment where you should be talking to your partner and saying, hey, look, I know that I was a bit ridiculous back then and I didn't mean to be, and I'm sorry. And that's how you should deal with that. The answer is not, oh, okay, well, I'm pregnant, therefore, you know, yeah, you just have to deal with me the way that I am, right? So that's pretty terrible as well. This one I also thought was very interesting. She says it's always a red flag when men start talking about the annoying girl at work. And that, I think, is such a terrible precedent. I don't know what it is with me. Like, does everyone's husbands or boyfriends or partners or whatever, have they all cheated before? And have they all cheated with the annoying girl at work? If this is a trope, I find that quite sad. And then one person replies to this and said, hey, I wouldn't let my husband get a girl's number. It's not like he needs it. I also liked how she said that, how he said that she had a boyfriend. Like, what does that have to do with anything? Why does he know that? Okay, so in general, most people know when people they work with, especially if they work with them every day, they know if they have partners, spouses, kids, and so on. This is quite normal. Why? Because sometimes you just have small talk, you know? You are asking what people are up to over the weekend, and then they tell you that they were with a girlfriend, for example. That's a pretty normal conversation to have in the context of work. And I would argue that he said that she had a boyfriend because he's like, well, you know what? I have a bit of a crazy fiancé, and how can I calm her down? Maybe if I tell her that the other woman is not an option, then she'll calm down. That's also another way that you could deal with this, that you could read this comment. It does not have to be that he thinks, that he's using it as an excuse in order to cover his tracks. Now, I'm not saying that he might not be cheating. He might be cheating. Just from all of the content in this thread, it sounds to me like OP is the crazy one here. And OP, being pregnant does not excuse you from being crazy. It's important to try to just dial it down if you actually hope to have a successful relationship with this man. If you don't care about having a successful relationship with this man because you hate the whole thing with the ex and the blended family anyway, then that's your choice. I always just feel the worst for the kids in these situations, for the new kids, the unborn ones who have not asked for this, who do not deserve this, who deserve to be born into a happy, stable household with both parents present. It's a real shame that this kind of thing happens to people. Now, the next one is titled Weird Christmas for Father-in-Law. Today I get this group text, my father-in-law, with a picture of him and saying everyone likes his new golf shirt. As I look at it, it's a Hawaiian style shirt with my child's picture scattered throughout the shirt. I showed my husband and I said, seriously? And he just sort of laughed and said, yeah, they, mother-in-law and his siblings, got that for him. I said, that's ridiculous. And then I replied to the text that I don't remember my daughter making or gifting that shirt. And he came back with it, saying that it was a Christmas gift and asked if he was in trouble. I didn't respond back. I was mad and we were at an event with my parents. I feel like other people shouldn't be gifting things to people with our daughter's photo on it or things like that, especially without asking. Last year, they gave my husband something that said best dad with her pictures and a picture of him with his parents. I just find it odd. Those are things our daughter should be giving to people or us as her parents should be giving to people. I also find it weird for a grown man to be wearing pictures of a child around on his shirt. Am I overreacting to this? Is it just because I'm almost bothered by father-in-law a lot? Or is this weird, I guess, because I'm most bothered by father-in-law a lot? Or is this weird? I know the next time I see him, he will bring it up, and I want to make sure I address how I feel about it. Now, when I read this, honestly, I was a bit like, I don't get it. I don't get it. It makes sense. Like, okay, maybe you can say it's a bit weird to have a shirt printed with a photo on it in general. No matter who that person is in your family, fine, fair enough. I'd find that a little bit strange. But I would not have this response of, hey, how dare anyone else in my family gift my father-in-law a picture of my child? That's a bit weird because that child is his grandkid, right? So it's pretty normal and natural for grandparents to have pictures of their grandchildren. And I think most grandparents would at the very least hang up pictures of their grandchildren. Like, I don't think that for us as parents, I guess I feel on some level, you could maybe make an argument along the lines of, hey, we as parents should have the right to decide who prints his pictures, how they're printed, and so on. And yeah, fair enough. I agree with that. But I would only get that if, for example, someone in the family is uploading this t-shirt, this Hawaiian shirt on Etsy and is selling it to other people who are not related or something like that. Or if it's been given to someone who's, who maybe you've never met them, then okay, maybe I kind of get it. I would find it a little bit strange then and would say, hey, you know what? I don't want pictures of my kid to be used in these contexts. Fair enough. But in this context, I don't get it. I find the statement that she thinks it's weird for a grown man to be wearing pictures of a child around on his shirt a bit strange. I don't know what she's trying to imply there. I would say that if he, it's just a picture of his grandkid. If he's open about being his grandkid, then whatever. And I do think that chances are quite a lot of this is because you hate your father-in-law for whatever reason. The fact that her husband doesn't really seem to care, he just finds it funny, then probably implies to me that it's more of a personal problem. And if he knew already that the mother-in-law and his siblings got it for the dad, then he was probably involved. And if he was involved, then suddenly they got approval from him, even if it's implicit approval, even if they didn't explicitly ask him, but they knew that he knew and he didn't say anything about it, then I would assume that he okayed it. So I don't think it's a weird Christmas gift. I think this is totally an overreaction. I find the statement of, hey, only our daughter or we as her parents should be giving pictures of her as gifts to other people. I find that a bit strange. Like this, she says, last year they gave my husband something that said best dad with her pictures on it. I mean, that makes sense, right? Like why would you not give him a gift with his child on it? Like they gave it to her husband, who is the dad of the child that she's talking about. So I think OP is a little bit too much here, a little bit too much. I don't think a lot of people agree with me. First person says, if you are not close with your in-laws, I think that's completely weird. Regardless of the relationship, I would make a point that someone should be talking to the parents before plastering their child's face anywhere on anything, especially when it's not even being given to the parents, but someone else. I'm sorry you even have to deal with that. And then she says, OP says, I wish I would have been asked if it was okay. I think I would not be as upset about it. I would have said no to the shirt, but I would have been open about something else if I was asked. And that just sounds to me like she's just super hyper controlling, and I don't really understand why. I don't quite get the danger of it. No one seems to have asked her, hey, like, why is this such a big deal to you? Which I find so strange. One person says, I find it odd that someone else in the family made it and gifted it to him versus you and your husband. Have you gifted anything to him with her photo in the past? Perhaps a mug or a personalized monthly calendar? Did your husband know that his family was ordering the personalized shirt and never told you? I would just explain that you feel comfortable with your baby's photo on items for extended family members that are not gifted by the child and your family. If your husband knew about the gift in the planning process, I would speak with him about your concerns as well, so he can speak up and shut these types of things down in the future. And so I still wonder fundamentally why is everyone like, yeah, sure, pictures are so evil. Now I kind of get it because we live in this age now where people plaster pictures of kids on Facebook, and I do think that you as parents should shut that down if you want to shut it down. Like I'm not comfortable at all with pictures of my kids being on Facebook, but that's a very different thing. That's you giving up your child's face in data form to the internet, and it will always be on the internet. That's very, very different from, hey, we just had this one shirt printed of our kid's face. I don't quite get what's the risk or what's the danger of having it there. One person says, I personally don't see the problem. I find it sweet and cute. It seems that your husband is okay with his father wearing a shirt with his child's face on it, so maybe you might be overreacting. Yeah, and I would probably agree with that. OP stands by what she said here. She says, no, she would find it annoying and weird no matter who asks for it or who does it or why they do it. But sometimes I feel that parents create problems for themselves and they look for sources of conflict just for the sake of it. And I don't quite get why you would live like that, because honestly, it's quite exhausting. There are enough real problems out there that you have to deal with as a parent, that you do not need to invent new ones for yourself just because. Now, the next one is titled, "My kid is so annoying." Are all kids this annoying, or is it just mine? She's 4, and from the moment she wakes up to the moment she goes to sleep, it is constant fussing, whining, asking for things. Example, asking for dessert when she hasn't finished dinner yet, and fighting with her 2-year-old sister. She's always calling my name, and if I don't respond immediately, she'll get nervous and start looking for me. I'll be in the bathroom or doing laundry. Also, she never listens. I mean, I know kids will be kids, but she doesn't even listen like once unless I yell, which I hate to do, but always end up doing, since I don't know any other way to get her to listen to me. Now, I don't have a lot of advice for OP here because I don't have experience with a 4-year-old. What I do find very sad, like there's so much about this thread that I kind of find super sad, actually. I get that as a parent, there will of course be times where you're annoyed by your kids and you can't really avoid that. But I wonder if she is annoyed constantly, the way that she seems to be annoyed constantly from the way that she writes this thread, then chances are the kid is aware and the kid feels it and the kid notices, and that's kind of sad for the kid. And I would wonder to what extent does that then worsen the experience that she's having and the behavior that she's exhibiting, because she can tell that her mom is annoyed at her. That's one aspect to it. The other aspect is when she says, hey, she asks for dessert when she hasn't finished dinner yet. Like, some of these behaviors sound like normal kid behaviors to me. I just wouldn't be so annoyed by them, honestly. Like, maybe my patience level is at a different level from most other people, but normal kid things, I would always say, okay, that's just normal kid behavior, and that's why she does that. This I find very interesting. She says she's always calling my name, and if I don't respond immediately, she'll get nervous and start looking for me. Now, I don't know if this is a normal kid behavior or not, but it sounds to me like she has a serious fear of being left alone, or being abandoned. And wherever that fear comes from, honestly, I would really sit down and try to talk to her about why she feels scared. I would also tell her where I'm going if I were to leave her. Like, I would try to work with her on that and try to develop a sense of trust and faith from her side, that she understands that I'm not, like, if I just disappear, if I go downstairs or something, then I'm not going to be gone forever. That seems to me like there is a total lack of understanding and compassion for the child's perspective here. And maybe that would be something that would help, because maybe that also worsens the behavior in general if she feels like she's not being respected or heard or listened to at all. And then the last thing she says, hey, kids will be kids, but she doesn't even listen like once unless I yell. Honestly, I think what often happens is that you set a precedent. So if you teach your child that the only way you're going to be serious about something is if you're yelling about it, then they take that at face value, and then they go, okay, well, so long as you're not yelling, then you're probably not that serious. So if I had this type of problem, then I would look for different ways to try to parent and discipline. And I would try to get rid of yelling from my set of behaviors that I show and portray in front of my child, because that is also something that she will pick up. Now, I really say this as someone from very outside perspective. I don't have anything near a 4-year-old, and I haven't interacted with a 4-year-old in a very long time. So maybe I'm just completely off base here. But often my perception of the majority of kids, when they start getting really angry, when they start getting really frustrated, when they throw tantrums, and when they freak out in ways like this, then often the thing that will help the most, in my opinion, is just engaging with the child, getting down on their level, trying to understand where they're coming from. And often I think that actually gets rid of a lot of the frustration that you feel as a parent as well, because instead of being like, hey, I just don't get what her problem is, suddenly you have a bit of a deeper understanding that she's actually trying to communicate with you, and maybe she's not communicating in the right way, and you have to try and set boundaries, and you have to push her communication in a way that really works. But the fact that she's trying to tell you something is still important, and as her mother, you should be there for her and trying to listen to it. So I say this as someone, at some point when I have a 4-year-old, I'm going to watch this video again, and then we'll see how much regret I feel for having said any of these things. A lot of people say, hey, this sounds like normal 4-year-old behavior to me. One person says, all of these sound normal. If she gets nervous when she can't find you, I would tell her, hey, I'm going to be doing the laundry. My kids do this to me too. They could be totally unaware of me for an hour, but the moment that I'm in the toilet, suddenly they need to find me. It's just easier to tell them that I'm going to be indisposed for a few minutes. So yeah, I think maybe kids have a natural fear at this age that that manifests itself, and then it's just about working with them to understand where that fear is coming from and to try and help them get rid of it. Next person says, hey, yeah, that sounds about right for that age. I'm always joking with my husband that kids are such a-holes. You really have to love them for the experience to be worthwhile. She'll quit the whining soon, but cop an attitude instead. And another person, this is not OP, but she replies, I think I almost enjoy the attitude more than the whining. I hate whining. Like, just use your normal voice. My God, my 4-year-old has the most nasal voice I've ever heard. And when she whines, wow, just wow. So it's just attitude, which is still impressive at the level she manages. I'm better with that. The whining is like nails on a chalkboard with that one. And the 8-year-old just randomly roars or growls. Like, what are you doing? Why did you just howl? What is this? So, okay, the 8-year-old sounds hilarious. The 4-year-old with the whining, honestly, I always wondered, do kids pick up these behaviors just by themselves? Or is there a setting or an environment in which they are exposed to them and then they're copying the people that they see and trying to see what happens? Because I think that's a pretty normal way for kids to behave. I would question, is there someone around my kid's life who whines in that way that is teaching them that whining is how they should the whining is a way that they can get what they want, for example, then I think it's likely that a lot of kids will do it. The next one I will read out says, sounds like you need a break, especially if you're resorting to yelling a lot. I don't mean that in a judgmental way. Kids are a lot of work and can be so frustrating. If my kid isn't listening after I say something 2 times, I'm done talking, which includes yelling, and I get up and physically enforce a boundary. So taking away a toy or removing him from the area, etc. If I just tell him something over and over and then yell, he's not going to take me seriously. Also, kids don't listen. Your kid sounds totally normal. It can still be annoying, but it's definitely normal. And so, yeah, I honestly, I'm one of those people who gets very, very touchy when yelling is happening in the house, and I don't like it and I don't enjoy it. And I think that the majority of parents resort to yelling out of desperation. There are very, very many ways, and there's a lot of information available out there on the internet. I think it's tempting when you have a forum like this to just go in and vent, because suddenly you have people there who just help you with your emotions, and it's a bit of a cathartic experience that you can just push those emotions out into the world and then be like, okay, maybe now I can calm down a bit. But there's also a ton of information on the internet about different types of ways you can parent, different ways that you could reduce tantrums, you could deal with tantrums, and how to really engage with your kid in a way that works for them, that takes into consideration their particular age and their development and how they feel and how they are. And hopefully, with access to a bit of information like that, you can move away from the behaviors that make you as a parent also frustrated and angry and that you want to get rid of. And our final thread of the day is titled, Mother-in-law Letting Toddler Destroy the Whole House. OP says, my toddler is 2 and has a habit of throwing things all over the place. We didn't want to baby-proof our whole house, so we gated off the family room and don't really have her go in other rooms unless it's mealtime, bath time, or bedtime. We basically supervise her in other rooms. Our family room contains most of her toys, and there's a TV. There's nothing dangerous or burdensome for her to get into. It just makes everything easier. And then I'm going to skip a bit because there's really a ton of content here. But essentially she says the kid spends a ton of time outside, so she has lots of space when she's frustrated. The problem is that the mother-in-law has a hippie way about her and has always had this attitude with her children. She thinks that children should explore, and it gets super annoying. I'm all for exploring, but not the kitchen while water is boiling, and not my jewelry box in my bedroom or my book collection that I don't want torn up. When the in-laws babysit, they frequently leave gates open, so a toddler gets out of the living room, which she knows that we don't like. We also have dangerous basement steps that are steep and lead to a cement floor. We keep the door locked, but it is a fear of mine. She says that my husband and I have been having in-laws babysit for short periods of time so we can get a date night once a month. And as soon as they come over, I feel like gates are left open. My mother-in-law will bring the daughter into her room and let her rifle through her clothes and drawers, throw books all over the ground and mix up all the shoes in her room, throw diaper supplies around. It really makes me upset and angry. I've said comments like, I don't like her going in there, messing everything up. I just clean this room and let's go back in the family room with toys. My mother-in-law will go out of her way to bring the toddler in my toddler's room. I get that it's my child's room, but it's mostly used for sleeping, diaper changes, and story time before bed, and I'm always in there or she's in her crib. And then she says, I don't want to stop letting them babysit, but I'm so sick of this hippie attitude of exploring all rooms and letting my daughter destroy the house. And then she says, what would you do? Does anyone have experience with this or with hippie grandparents? I sometimes wonder how my husband survived. Now, I found this entire thread a little bit obnoxious, to be completely honest. There is something about the way that OP talks about her child, which, like, I get it. Okay, she's a 2-year-old. She's very inquisitive. She's very curious. She wants to explore a lot. So she gets into everything. She obviously doesn't have a perception of cleaning up or not leaving behind a mess. So I understand why OP is annoyed in terms of, okay, maybe she's trying to keep her house super clean and the in-laws are not listening to her and not following her directions and so on. All that said, she's a child, and having your child locked essentially into one room in your whole house, and that's the only space that she's allowed to actually just be in and be free and roam, seems very restrictive to me, like way too restrictive. I can't quite comprehend why you would do that as a parent. I would baby-proof more rooms and then be a bit more okay with her spending time there. She says, hey, if her kid is spending time in other rooms, then they spend time supervised. And then she complains at the same time that the mother-in-law takes the daughter in her room with her and lets her rifle through her clothes and drawers, for example. Like, this is a pretty normal behavior. And so like, it's a kid who wants to explore some clothes. If the mother-in-law doesn't have a problem with her clothes being messy in the drawer, or if she's willing to fix them up herself afterwards, and if she's supervising the child so there's no safety risk, then I just don't understand what the problem is. It seems to me like the extent to which I could be empathetic here is if they are setting the kid loose and there's a safety concern where she's like, okay, this is a serious problem, in which case, fair enough. I would talk to them about that and say, hey, this is really a problem and we don't want her to get hurt. The other situation, which I might be a little bit sympathetic, is if they are setting the kid loose and then she makes a mess and then they kind of just leave the mess behind and go to the next room, make a mess there, go to the next room, make a mess there. And so I kind of understand both of those circumstances a little bit. But otherwise, no, actually, I don't think it's a very hippie attitude to think that your kids should be allowed to explore your house. And I would try to give as much space as possible in my house for my kids so that they can understand, like, they can just engage with the world. As a 2-year-old, they're just trying to learn things, you know? And if that's figuring out clothes, if that's throwing things on the floor, because the concept of gravity is very interesting for children, so they like throwing things all the time, then I just don't understand what the big deal is. I think that dealing with the mess of a 2-year-old is just not that. Like, yes, it's messy, but it should not stop the kid from living a full life. And if the only way that you can engage with your child is by keeping her locked in one room, then your kid is not living a very full life. So I think OP is a little bit over the top, and I would try to step back a little bit, take a deep breath, really try to understand what is essential and what is not in terms of what level of restriction do I actually need to place on my kids' behavior, and how can I baby-proof more rooms in the house so that this is less likely to be a problem. Things like, hey, make drawers hard to open for kids, or cupboards difficult to open, those kinds of things like that. That should not be so difficult to do that it's impossible, right? Like, that's a pretty normal set of behaviors that you should do when your kids start becoming mobile and exploring other rooms in the house. So that's how I feel about this one. Some people will say, hey, at the end of the day, it's your house. You should return to it as you left it. Understandably, toddlers do get into stuff and make a mess, but you have a designated place for her to do that. I would bring it up again the next time they babysit. And yeah, it's fair enough, like your house, your rules. But also, if you're really unreasonable and if your in-laws actually fundamentally disagree with you, not that I think your in-laws have a right to disagree with you, but I would question if your husband is on the same page with regards to how the kids are interacting with the grandparents. And then if he's also on the same page and he thinks, hey, no, the kids should only be allowed in this one room, then that would be a conversation that I would ask him to have with them. Some people will ask things like, hey, can they babysit at their house instead? That way they can deal with the mess. And then OP says, hey, we don't trust them to babysit at their house because it's not baby proofed at all, and they leave out items that aren't good for a toddler, like glass dishes and breakables. I think they try not to let her get into bad items, but I feel like they are slow reacting, old, or slow moving. And then that sounds to me like there is a safety concern. Alternatively, for example, you could help them baby proof their house, you know, and then be like, all right, now you can spend time here. You can let her explore to whatever extent you want. She can't reach anything that's dangerous to her by herself. Therefore, it's fine. Like, that would be a solution that you could come up with and you could offer, and then they don't have to do it, and you don't have to worry about it. But yeah, if you think that your in-laws can't react fast enough to look after your baby, then maybe that's the problem. And the next comment is from this person. She says, "You're being ridiculous. I don't know any parent that allows the child in one room. That's crazy and won't fly for much longer when they can climb and open the gate. I can't believe that they already don't. You need to stop expecting a spotless toddler-free home because, surprise, you have a toddler." And OP gets very defensive here. She says, "My child goes in every room in my house, but not unattended. And I don't allow my kid to take out all the pots and pans or dump all the clothes in every drawer. Our family room is pretty much a playroom. I think it's pretty typical to have a playroom. My toddler doesn't climb or open gates. I know eventually it will change, but I don't think it's weird to keep dangerous items out of reach. It's called being responsible." And then the next reply is from another person who says, "How are pots and pans dangerous or clothes? I just don't understand the concept of confining your child to a single room. They are not a dog, especially their own room." And to that, I would agree. I honestly, I don't think that you should be confining your kid into one room. It's not so much about the mess as it is about giving your kid the sense of freedom and ability to explore the world and interact with it without you needing to be there all the time. Like, this screams a little bit to me of helicopter parenting, of someone who's so worried about any possible thing that the child might get into or that they might do that she's like, hey, I need to be 100% in control and supervising her 150% of the time. There will not be a single second that she spends out of my direct eyesight or in an environment where I have not touched every single item there. And I get some element of that. Like, I do think baby proofing is important and so on. But there's a point at which it becomes totally unreasonable and totally stressful. And you just create so many problems for yourself with that attitude. Like, I would, if my kid was really interested in clothes, I would let her play with clothes. And then eventually I would help her and teach her how to fold them up, how to put them away. Like, we would make it a thing that we do together and that we spend time on together, rather than it being this thing that she's not allowed to do. And of course, as a child, she will always covet the things that she's not allowed to do. So fundamentally, I think more relaxed parenting, like just being okay with a little bit of mess, is a much healthier style to parent in general than to convince yourself that you can control absolutely every aspect of your kids and what they do all the time. That's all we have time for today. If you disagree with any of my comments about anything, feel free to leave a comment down below, and I will see you next time.